When learning computer science or how to program, understanding basic math is a pretty important thing to know. Most of the time when you make a program, there is going to be some form of math that you're going to use, which is why today we're going to talk about the mathematical operators in Python 3. This is best explained in the Python prompt, so I'm going to go ahead and open that now by running the Python command, and I'm just going to expand this terminal to fill the whole window so that you can get the full screen here. So just like you would expect, there are the 4 basic operators that you can use in math. You have addition, subtraction, multiply, and divide, and those are pretty straightforward. If you've typed on a keyboard, you might know what they are. So we'll just do an example here, 2 plus 2. The add operator is just the plus. You're going to get 4. The reason I'm using the prompt is because you can see the output without having to print anything or make a variable to store the value in it. So that's the only reason why I'm using the prompt right now, at least. So we can do the same thing with 2 minus 2, and you'll see that it's going to be 0, just like you may notice. Something important to note that if you use these operators here, if you're working with integers, you're going to get an integer returned to you. So say that I do 2.0 plus 2.0. See, I get 4.0, and the same will be with subtraction, 0.0. So now if I want to multiply 2 times 2, you'll see that I'm going to get 4. The asterisk is the multiply operator. And then finally, for division, you will use the forward slash. So if I want to do 2 divided by 2, I will get 1, right? You'll notice that when you divide any data type in Python, you're actually going to get a float returned to you regardless. I used 2 integers here, just 2 over 2, and that returned 1.0. There is a special operator that you can use to ensure that you get an integer returned to you. This is called floor division. I'm just going to do 2 forward slashes, and this signifies that I want integer division, or it's called floor division in Python 3. Hit enter, you'll see that I get 1 returned as an integer. There's also an operator to create exponents in Python, and that is used by a double asterisk. If I want to create an exponent in Python, I'm going to have the value first that I want to be exponential. Then I will follow it by 2 asterisks, and then the exponent up here. So if I want 2 squared, this is the 2, the base, and then the exponent here. If I wanted to do cubed, I would do that, and then so on. You'll see that it will return 4 because 2 times 2 is 4. There is one more operator that you should understand because a lot of programmers use it, and it's a pretty fundamental concept of programming or just math in general. This isn't an operator that you would have learned in a math class, I would assume, but it is very useful to know. This is called the modulo operator, or you might hear it being called modulus or just mod, and that is the percent symbol here. This operator will return the remainder of a quotient. So for example, you'll notice that if I do 2 divided by 2, what do you think is going to get returned? If this returns the remainder of a division problem, what do you think is going to happen? Well, since 2 divides into 2 evenly, there is no remainder, meaning that you're going to get a 0 back. It's also important to note that the mod operator returns an integer value. To give an example of the mod operator, let's use something that isn't going to come out as a 0 remainder. If I want to do 8 mod 3, that means that the remainder is going to be 2 because 3 fits into 8 2 times, and then there is a 2 left over. Some applications for the mod operator, it might not be very apparent right now, but you can actually see if a number is evenly divisible by another number. For example, I can check if any number is even if I mod it by 2. That means that 2 divides into the number, and if it returns a 0, then that means that there was no remainder and that the number is even. Same thing, I can check if a number is divisible by 3 by just modding it by 3, and you'll see that it returns a 0 as well. This is pretty useful if you want to check if a number is even or divisible by a number, just like I mentioned before. Now that we've gotten the operators out of the way, let me go ahead and shrink this window here, and I'm going to go ahead and call the quit function so I can get back into my terminal here. And we're going to go ahead and talk about the order of operations. This is going to follow the normal order of operations that you've learned in school: parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It's also important to note that the modulus will fall under multiplication and division because it is technically a form of division. So if you wanted to write it in terms of computer science, I guess you could do like PEMDAS with 2 M's. It's also important to note that both division operators fall under division, so integer division or floor division or just normal division works the same. Just like in math, you can use parentheses to help make things more explicit, and I would highly encourage using parentheses to make everything just very, very clear and to make the computer understand exactly what you want operated in which order. When I write programs, I basically abuse parentheses because I just want to make sure that my math is always evaluated the exact same way that I want it to be. So we can do maybe 2 to the third here, and then maybe multiply that by 2 plus 3. So you'll see that this will follow the normal order of operations, and if I print out the result of this, if I go ahead and run the program, you'll see the output is 19 because first of all it evaluated everything in the parentheses here. So it evaluated 2 cubed, and then it evaluated this times 2, and then finally it would have evaluated the plus 3. So you'll see now if I wrap these in parentheses and run it again, the result is different because now it's taking 2 cubed and multiplying that by 5. Just an example of the order of operations. Like I said, this should mostly be a review for most of you because I'm sure you've taken a basic arithmetic class or just a basic math class in general. Before we really try to apply these concepts, let's go ahead and go over another set of operators, and these are assignment operators. We've already gone over one assignment operator earlier, and that was just the equal sign, and that just says set whatever is on the right equal to whatever is on the left, or vice versa. So in this case, we're storing the value 3 in the variable x. That's just the basic assignment operator. There are also more assignment operators that you can do, and we're going to go get ahead into them. So this first operator I'm showing you is the increment operator. So it just means to increment the variable by the amount that you give it. So to do that, I'm going to do the name of the variable, and I'm going to use the plus equals operator. This is the increment operator, and I want to increment it by 1. So it's just important to note that this is the same as taking x and setting it equal to x plus 1. So if we use this example here, x starts off as 3, and then if we run this, it's going to increment by 1 and go to 4 because we're doing x equals 3 because it's going to go back to the last declaration, and then plus 1. Add 1 to it, you get 4, and then you set it equal to 4. If we go ahead and prove this here, I'm going to print x before we increment and then print x after we increment, and I'm going to run the program. You'll see it starts off as 3 because that's what we initialized it to, and then when we increment it, it goes up to 4. These operators work with every other mathematical operator that we did before. So you can decrement something. So if we continue to use x, maybe let's subtract it by 2. So once we do this, and I'm actually going to steal this line up here. Once we do this, you're going to notice that it's going to decrement down back to 2 again because we subtracted 2. You can also do this with multiplication and division. So if I do x and then star equals 2, this will just take x and multiply it by 2 and then store that value in the variable. And I forgot to print it, of course, but that would bring us back up to 4 because 2 times 2 is 4. You can also do it with division. So if we do x and then divided equals, and let's just do like, we'll do 2 again, sure. So then I'll do that, and then you'll see that, and I once again forgot to print it. So if we run this again, you'll see that we will get 2.0 because, like I mentioned before, when you use the division operator, it stores a float in the variable. So now, like I said in the last video, we're going to go ahead and continue our little financial program that we were building We're going to use every tool that we've already acquired so far. So just to kind of mimic what we had going on last video, I'm going to go ahead and create a variable called like salary, and I'm going to set that, or maybe I'll do like paycheck. This makes a little more sense. And I'm going to cast the input to a float because I want to make sure that I have like a actual value. I'm going to say like enter this week's paycheck. And then I'm going to format that with like a $sign or something because it's money. And then this will store the value that we pass into the console as a float. So now let's say that we want to capture the percent that the user would like to save from their paycheck. So I can maybe store this in a value called like percent and then cast this input to a float as well. And you'll see why. And we'll say maybe like, oh my gosh, I can't type. Enter the amount, or we'll say enter the percent you would like to save from each paycheck. And then we'll do like a percent. I know normally the percent sign is here, but, or actually we'll just remove it and then we'll have it right here. So now if we go ahead and, print both of these variables, so we'll like do paycheck here, and then I'm just, for the sake of this, I'm just going to separate it by a comma because it's not going to stay like this. And if I clear my console and run it, so let's say for example I'm doing pretty good, I get $500 this week, and then I want to save 10%, so I'm going to pass that in as an integer, and then you'll see that it casted them as floats. So if I want to actually calculate the percent, so first of all we need to turn this percentage into a decimal so that we can actually use it in math. So I'm going to use the assignment operator. I'm going to divide itself by 100, and this is to essentially move the percentage sign, turn it into a decimal. So if I put 10% in, it'll be 0.1% and so on. So now if I print the percent here and then I go ahead and run this again and I get paid 500 and I want to save 10%, you'll see that it is 0.1. That's just the percentage as a decimal. So then let's go ahead and maybe make a variable called like amount to save, and then we will take the paycheck and we will multiply that by the percent. So this is going to be the amount of our paycheck that we want to put into our savings, and then I could print a useful little message to the user, and instead of separating variables by a comma, I'm going to separate a string and then I'm going to pass in the variable. This is just to put in a space. I'm going to say like you need to save, and then I'll just do dollars. I'll separate this by a comma, I guess, and I'll just do that. And that'll be like you need to save however many dollars, right? There's going to be space in between there, but that's fine. So if I clear this and then I go back and maybe I got like 100, or we'll do something weird. We'll do like 501.07. I got $501.07, and then I want to save 10%. So it says if I wanted to save 10%, then I would need to save $50.10. This is just an extremely basic example of how you can use math to make programs that are pretty useful for you or your user. We don't really have the tools right now to be able to make a more fleshed out program, but with what we have so far, we have more than enough to be able to calculate simple equations or things like that. In the next video, we're going to finally start talking about general computer science concepts, and we're going to start by talking about Boolean logic.